Thank you for tuning in into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. Yes, we are back for another episode. It is currently 3:44 p.m. and today's date is the 24th of December 2024. Christmas Eve, everybody. Yes, it is Christmas. Tomorrow is Christmas. How do you feel? Are you feeling blessed? Do you feel like you had a successful year? Are you fired up? Are you thankful? And do you feel blessed? Okay. Do you feel blessed? All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the live show. And we're going to have a good time. It might be a short one, but I am here. You're here. And we're going to have a good time. Okay. Stay positive. And yeah, man, this is what it is. With that being said, a lot is going on right now in the United States. And if you're getting ready to probably go out or have a good time with your family, or you're just gonna sit home and put on a good TV show with your ice cream and chocolate, because I got some chocolate back there, like, just have a good time. But for now, I am going to have a good time with you guys, and after that I'm gonna take my daughter out and we're gonna have a good time. We have chocolate. She doesn't really like chocolate like that, but yeah, I'm going to be spending my Christmas Eve with my gorgeous, beautiful, smart, intelligent, amazing, brave daughter. Okay. And that's a blessing. So you better spend some time with your children. And she's right here looking at me with her mouth open, like, Daddy, is that me? Yeah, that's you. Beauty baby. Okay. So back to business. Back to business. Back to business. Back to business. Now, of course, we know the legendary is gonna be inaugurated on June 20. It's wild how we used to say would be indicted or got indicted. Now we're saying is going to be inaugurated. But anyway, yeah, he says as soon as I am inaugurated, I will direct the Justice Department to vigorously pursue the death penalty to protect American families and children from violent rapists, murderers, and monsters. We will be a nation of law and order again. Support that. I ain't gonna cap. I support that because if you're raping kids, if you're being violent, um, you're murdering and being a monster, yeah, you deserve to get whatever you get. But let's listen, man.
President-elect Donald Trump is now slamming President Biden's 11th hour commutations of nearly all federal death row inmates. Trump posting on Truth Social that once he's in the White House, he will, quote, direct the Justice Department to vigorously pursue the death penalty to protect American families and children from violent rapists. We will be a nation of law and order again.
Meanwhile, an outpouring of outrage and disbelief from relatives of the victims of those death row inmates set free by Biden. One person whose sister was fatally strangled is now speaking out, telling the New York Post, quote, why does he need to get special treatment? He's just going to risk other people. What justification does Biden have for doing this? I want to have him explain to us, to our faces, why he chose to give them mercy when they didn't give other people mercy. Karl Rove is former White House Deputy Chief of Staff and a Fox News contributor. Karl, the outrage is certainly understandable, and it's worth noting that before Jorge Avila Torres murdered Naval Officer Amanda Snell, he also raped and murdered an 8- and 9-year-old child, 2 girls. You see those girls here. Their names are Laura Hobbs and Crystal Tobias, next to Naval Officer Amanda Snell. Do you think, Karl, that Joe Biden knows the names Laura Hobbs and Crystal Tobias and even knew this?
No, absolutely not. Look, this is a morally bankrupt act by the outgoing president. Think about this. He takes all but 3 of the people who were on death row for federal crimes involving murder, and all but 3, and says, I'm going to commute your sentences, but I'm going to allow the death penalty to be applied in these 3 other high-profile cases where we might know the names of the victims because they include things such as the guy who bombed the Boston Marathon. I mean, why say the death penalty is wrong in those 37 cases and right in the other 3? At least he would be morally morally consistent if he said, I oppose the death penalty, even though it is a law established on the statute books of the United States by an act of Congress signed by a previous president of the United States. I'm going to ignore that law, but at least it would be consistent. I hate the death penalty. Nobody should have to be dealt with in that way. But no, we're going to have some where the death penalty will apply and others where it won't. And you're right. He cannot mention a single victim, I suspect, of a murder that he has now commuted the sentence to life in prison. I mean, this is astonishing. And to do it on the eve of Christmas, think about those families who lost a loved one and how they're going to be dealing with that trauma during what ought to be one of the most beautiful moments of the year.
Well, that's such a...
God bless them, and God question why Joe Biden did this.
That's such a great point on multiple levels, Carl, whether or not you're morally equating one heinous act versus another, but specifically with the timing. You worked in the White House. Was there any reason that it had to be done right before the most sentimental holiday? Stabbing just a dagger of grief to these families now reacting. Could it have waited till after the holidays, perhaps in the new year?
Sure, he could have. But look, let's go back to the essential nature of this, which is Joe Biden has made a decision that he was so offensive in his language. He said, I believe in a fair legal system. Well, these men and women were fairly tried and held in a court of law by a jury of their peers to have committed a heinous act and were judged accordingly and granted the death penalty. And he decides this is not a case where, while they were sitting in prison, they did something incredible. They saved the life of a fellow inmate, or they found God and entered a religious order, or, no, they did. There's no attempt to say, well, these people deserve to have their sentence commuted because of things that they've done since the time that they were found guilty. It is a simple act that they were found guilty of a crime so heinous that they were given the death penalty that has drawn the mercy of Joe Biden. Of course, except for the 3 that, for some reason, he's not granting a commutation of their death sentence. This is unbelievably callous and stupid, in my opinion.
Well, and certainly some have suggested that those 3 exceptions.
What do you guys think, though? What do you guys think about all of this going on? Do you think it should commute their death sentence? Look, a lot of people don't support, the death penalty. I happen to be one of those people. However, it's like when you're raping children, like, Jesus, relax. You're going to have to take whatever comes. I'm sorry, man. I can't. Look, keep him on death row, man. That's it. Keep him. Look, I support keeping them on death row, even though I don't support death row. But the guy, raping kids, yeah, you're going to have to go.
Exceptions were for fear of a negative PR moment, which I'm pretty sure a lot of people are thinking this may be one after, as you so well laid out, the inconsistencies of conscience. Carl Rove, have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You know what time it is. Look, that is a messed up situation. But anyway, another situation brewed up in New York where an illegal migrant also set somebody ablaze. Wild. Set them ablaze in New York. Check it out.
We are back with the latest on the illegal immigrant accused of setting a sleeping woman on fire and watching her burn to death on a New York City subway. Sebastian Zapata Khalil is now charged with first and second degree murder as well as arson for the horrific crime that happened early Sunday morning. The Brooklyn DA saying, quote, this gruesome and senseless act of violence against a vulnerable woman will be met with the most serious consequences, end quote. ICE confirming the alleged killer first crossed the border in 2018 illegally and was deported under the Trump administration. But it's unclear when or where he re-entered the country. The suspect reportedly could face a judge as soon as today. Brian, over to you.
All right, thanks so much. Unbelievable. This happening as bystanders stood by and did absolutely nothing, adding to the outrage felt across the city. Some officers did jump in, we should say. Guardian Angels founder Curtis Sliwa, who's a mayoral candidate, Republican nominee last cycle, lost to Eric Adams, says there's no doubt that people don't want to get involved. It's the Danny Penny factor. It's frozen people. They're saying to themselves, I don't want to get jammed up like Penny. People should have been running over to the woman on fire. They did nothing. They said nothing. In fact, some just taped it. Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce joins us now. Tammy, do you agree with Curtis?
Morning. Absolutely. And at first, when I saw that one video with people literally just standing there, it's hard to believe. I thought it was fake. You know, we have to question that all the time. When we see something that appears unbelievable, often it is. But in this case, it wasn't. And there's officers did intervene at some point, but there's one video of an officer walking by nonchalantly. Others, it boggles the mind. And yet we see messages, and this is the power of what the government does, is that when they defund the police, when they don't show up, when they don't respond, even when they are there, it tells people, including people who've come here illegally, that even we don't have respect for ourselves, that even we don't care about law and order. And this is what sparks, look, this is, New York has problems, but nobody just decides to do that to another human being. And so this is the kind of person who's wandering around this country. Fortunately, it's not the majority of them. But my God, what have we done in opening the doors, and who have we encouraged to come here?
Absolutely, Tammy. The other thing is with cops qualified.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, who does this? Who sets somebody on fire and sits there and watch them burn? That is a psychopath. That is someone who is definitely sick up here. That's somebody who is just like probably dead in their heart. There's nothing left breathing in their heart of theirs. I can promise you that. Like, they're just gone. They're probably like ice cold. 'Cause you could sit there and watch somebody burn and just sit there. Even with the Christmas spirits going around, you still had the audacity to do something like this. It's I cannot even explain it.
Immunity, it's a different conversation, but they don't want to get involved too much because they don't want to get sued and lose everything.
Right.
Also, this guy's going to be deported, should be deported. He came in 2018, tossed out, sneaks back in. But in a sanctuary city, you're going to have your hands full. You're going to be doing paperwork all day. In fact, in New York City, you do paperwork for every interaction. It paralyzes people who say, you don't pay me enough to do all this. Meanwhile, something else I know you think about deeply because you're so into politics, and that is where we go now in this election cycle. And it turns out even Democrats are admitting they're rudderless right now. They have no identity. And this was an interesting quote from this story in the New York Times. He says, the Democratic brand is in the toilet, says Liz Smith. Many of the Democrats who succeeded this cycle are best overperformers in House races, for instance, are people who ran against Democratic Party brand. Trump tore down the blue wall in the industrial Midwest, but he also expanded his vote in in our bluest and most urban areas. Even areas he didn't win, he made gains. I think about Tom Suozzi in my area. He actually sounded like a Republican. That's how he flipped George Santos's seat. Your thoughts, Tammy?
Well, even though in this conversation in the New York Times and in a Politico piece, the problem for the Democrats is, there's a lot of jargon in what it is she's saying, a lot of insider politics stuff, and they don't even really want to touch upon the fact that they believe in things, the party believes in things that no one else believes in, that this wasn't, some mistaken strategy. This is a party that has been rejected by Americans because we can't even talk about not being able to recognize what's going on in the country. The Democratic Party, in not just pandering to the far left, clearly Biden hasn't been in charge. Someone on the far left has been in charge who would never have been elected, who Americans do not want. So what did we do? We fired all of them. We gave the government in its entirety to Trump and the Republicans. We hope they deliver, but they couldn't. At least some of the people they spoke to, the voters in a panel they had, touched on this idea of values and it's not what we believe in. But even then, there's a fear of being canceled if you say the transgender ideology, separate from identity, the two are separate things. The political ideology it has got to go. This cannot be forced on people. Censorship, forced speech, men in women's sports, all those things. Nobody.
Too many BS, yo. Too many BS going on. This is why you have this amount of degeneracy, if that's a word. If that's a word, so many degenerates just walking around doing bunch of BS. How can you sit down and watch someone, literally watch someone burn? You set them on fire and you sat there by the subway and you were watching them burn. Because New York is a sanctuary state. This person is an illegal immigrant. And New York spent like what, 1.4, 1.5 billion dollars in 2023 fiscal year on illegal migration. So you spent that much money on migration, and then you still have retarded psychopath like this in your city. Oh, I see. Wonderful. Great. Thank you. Good spending of people's tax hard hand money. Okay. They work so hard to pay taxes. They earn their money, and then guess what happens? They give it to you, and then you bring people to kill them, to set them on fire on the subway that they're funding. Oh, wonderful. What a great state.
Everybody wants, including Democrats, and the Democrats and the left have had, and this is their mistake, made it a dangerous thing to speak up. So what did they get? They got fired, and they still can't figure it out. They think it's still all Trump. That's why they're going to have a problem for the next 4 years, and this is a chance for the Republicans to deliver.
Yeah.
That could never come. Look, there would never be. As I said this. Look. The future belongs to Republicans and independents. If you're a Republican and you're an independent thinker, you will have a very bright future as long as you position yourself and you're very articulate with your beliefs. Okay? You communicate properly and show the people that, look, I believe in this and that. I don't believe in man and women's sport. I don't believe in illegal migration. I don't believe in this. I don't believe in that. Because this is why. This is just the whole reason why the Democratic Party is going in shambles. They're definitely going in shambles. I projected that in 2028 and 2032, they may probably get Congress or Senate or whatever, but they would not get the executive position, which is the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States. I don't think that the Democrat Party will be winning the presidential election in the next 48 years. I don't think so.
It's very interesting because if you go up to a Democrat now and say about the trans issue, you think women should be playing with men's sports or the trans issue, they'll say it rarely happens. I go, you guys still don't get it. What do you mean it rarely happens? You don't get it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Tammy,
They've got to face it.
but thanks for answering the.
Yeah, man, they got to face it. They got to face it. They need new, fresh blood. Someone like Fetterman, okay, great. He's a moderate. He has common sense, okay? I don't know about AOC, though. Yeah, I don't know about AOC.
So as Christians' traditions begin across the world, Syrian church leaders are advising Christians to scale back Christmas celebrations this year, despite assurances from new Islamic leaders that they're going to be protected. U.S. Ambassador to Israel nominee and former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee joins us now. Ambassador, you're about to spend, Governor, you're about to spend the next 4 years of your life right in this tumultuous region. If you were a Christian in Syria, from how well you do know this region now, how would you be approaching this Christmas?
With a great deal of caution. We don't know really what this new regime is going to do. We know their history, and it's not a good one. They say many wonderful things about how they're going to change and how they have changed, but we've heard all that before. Let's hope it's true. Let's hope they've really decided they're going to be civilized people and not agents of al-Qaeda. But the people who live there have to be concerned that this may be like a song from The Who. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
One thing is pretty clear: the new boss does not have good relations with the Russians or the Iranians, which is great news. We have an opportunity to kick them out of that area and stop the weapons flow as a land bridge right through that country. Israel has not stopped trying to take out the weaponry of Syria during this transition. What's their objective, as you understand it?
Well, they understand very clearly that they have to eradicate the forces that would do the kind of things that they did on October the 7th and that have rained down rockets and missiles on top of their civilian population. These aren't just military actions. These are the actions of an evil, corrupt, and disgusting group of terrorists. These aren't people from forming a government. These are people who would murder the most innocent among the population and do it intentionally. This isn't collateral damage. This is intentional damage. There's a big difference. And we also have to never forget that where this comes from is from the Iranian regime. So it's imperative that systematically and methodically Israel dismantle those forces that are set to take them down.
And they push forward in the Golan Heights because it's an ungovernable area, and they cannot let that area be pushed forward with this new regime whose leader, we had a $10 million bounty on his head, which I understand we're removing. And we did have a meeting, on the State Department official did have a meeting with him, and they said he's somewhat pragmatic. We'll see what that means. Just so everybody knows, there was 1.4 million Christians in 2011 in Syria. Now they're down to 300,000. I don't have to tell you, as a pastor, that Christmas and Hanukkah fall on the same time this year. It's very rare. The spiritual significance of that for Christians and Jews celebrating this holiday at the same time.
I think it's a wonderful opportunity. In fact, in Little Rock, I'm going to be lighting the first candle of Hanukkah on Christmas evening. I'm very honored to be able to do that. Obviously, my family and I will be celebrating Christmas, mostly today and, of course, tomorrow, but also celebrating with my Jewish friends the incredible holiday of Hanukkah. And it's going to be a delightful experience, especially in light of where, God willing, and the U.S. Senate confirming, I'll be headed to the middle of the Jewish state sometime in early 2025.
Governor, we've had our hopes up before, but there's a sense with Hamas suffering such devastating losses and with Gaza in tatters that they might be ready to save themselves and give up the hostages. Your source, even though you're not there yet, your sources are impeccable. Your thought about how much hope people should have today?
I think they should have far more hope than they've had for the most of the 400-plus days that this has gone on, way too long. For the first time, when President Trump made the comment, and he said if those hostages aren't released by the time he's inaugurated on January 20th, Hamas will have hell to pay. And I think they understand he means business. As I've said several times, we're trading Barney Fife with one bullet in his pocket for Wyatt Earp. And I think Hamas understands. A new sheriff is coming to town, and he means business, and they better let those hostages go. And it's way past time. 7 of them are Americans, Brian. This is what's so frightening and sad. Those need to be let go. All of them need to be let go.
You're getting an extremely important position. You know that. You're going to sail right through confirmation. That's understood. I look forward to seeing your great work over there. Another great challenge for Mike Huckabee. And I'm sure you'll bring your guitar. Governor,
you bet.
Great to see you. Have a fantastic.
And this is key. During the RNC, the legendary 45th, now the 47th said, if by the time he wins the election and by the time he's getting inaugurated and those hostages have not been released, there would be hell to pay for Hamas. But here we are. They're still not released. It's going to be, you better get ready. It's about to be heavy, like really heavy.
Is Trump onto something?
No. Oh, sorry. No. Did you want me to? You had. There was a longer question there.
It was a longer. Yeah. I mean, okay. So here, let me.
Yeah. Sorry.
Onto something or on something? I just want to clarify those.
Let me make the case as Trump sees it.
Go ahead.
Okay. the United States invested an enormous amount of blood, sweat, and tears, literally.
Right.
Many Americans killed in building the Panama Canal into this incredibly critical thoroughfare, right? China is trying to come in and basically buy its way into dominance in the Panama Canal. Panama is seeing the dollar signs and saying, oh, maybe we might sidle up to China. Is there a national security imperative for the United States to reverse that trend?
Right. So, we agreed, the United States agreed to hand over control of the Panama Canal to the Panama people and to the government of Panama in the 70s, 50 years ago. And that's not up for renegotiation. There's no scenario under which we could get it back, even if we wanted to, other than invading Panama, which is a very stupid scenario.
It is a scenario, though.
But not a scenario that would actually happen in real life in 2025. So what Trump is really talking about is, yes, there's a kernel of a real issue here, which is that the Chinese have invested heavily in the maintenance of the canal that we purchased and that we built and that we abandoned. And now they've given the government of Panama $1 billion for a bridge. They've gotten the contracts through a fair process to manage the ports. And the reason that Central and South American countries are leaning towards China is because China approaches them with investment and with money, and we approach them with threats, and stupid threats at that. And if you were Panama, which one would you choose? So this is not only the completely wrong way to approach the U.S. relationship with Panama, it's the completely wrong way to approach the U.S. competition with China, because anywhere you go in the world, there's a Chinese company or the Chinese government offering incentives. And if Donald Trump is going to go around offering threats and, threats that are not credible at that, of course these countries are going to go towards China. That's exactly what happened. Xi Jinping went right back to the government of Panama and said, we're with you. We stand with the sovereignty of Panama. And they're actually on the right side of the issue. We're on the wrong side of the issue. And that's really, again, a really unforced error.
I really did not have threats against Panama and Greenland.
Is this the priority, by the way? Is there nothing else going on in the world?
Well, he says, Trump says, as he announces his ambassador to Greenland, for the purposes of national security and freedom throughout the world, the United States of America feels that the ownership and control of Greenland is an absolute necessity. Does Trump envision Greenland, Panama, Canada as opportunities for the United States to go back into an era of colonialism where we just take what we want?
Abby, this is all part of ending the forever wars by threatening new forever wars everywhere else to get us out of the old ones. On the issue of Panama, they used to be allies.
To think that these are Americans. Okay, these are not Canadians, or these folks up here are Americans. And American men, okay, American men. And this guy right here, this is an American man, the guy that was talking before this other guy. This is an American man that probably his ancestors built Panama Canal, and you're saying that China approaches them with incentives, with billions of dollars, with business ideas or business incentive or whatever. Who cares, bro? Okay. Americans died building the Panama Canal. That's all that matters. Okay. And don't forget, it wasn't even Americans that started it. They didn't start it. The French started building the Panama Canal, but they ran out of investment. They ran out of manpower because a lot of people were dying based on malaria and yellow fever. And Americans took it over and they built it, completed it. And now Panama wants to give the Panama Canal to China, who happens to be American, or, according to history, one of America's greatest adversary. Greatest adversary? Nah, we're not going to do that. Nah, man, that's not going to work. That's absolutely not going to work. Hell no.
With Taiwan, they ended their relationship with Taiwan. They've joined China's Belt and Road Initiative. They've got Chinese-controlled ports on both sides of them. There's a reason for the U.S. to be paying attention to this. And with Trump, you basically have three settings. You have outright strikes, like killing Soleimani in Iraq way back towards the end of his first term. You have threats and bluster, or you have ignoring them. Threats and bluster, as close as we're going to get to paying attention to the Central America and to this region. So look, as bad as this is, as ominous as this is, we know that Trump the entire first term, he talked about we were going to acquire Greenland. Right. And he retweeted the image of a Trump casino on the empty plains of Greenland. I think he just liked that. I think he just likes the idea of acquiring things. But I noticed in the first Trump term, we did not acquire any new territories. We did not invade any other place. We took a few strikes here and there. We did much against ISIS.
But we did damage a bunch of alliances, and that's what we're doing here. We're damaging our alliance with Denmark for no reason, over a bunch of stupidity. We're damaging our partnership with Panama for no reason, over a bunch of stupidity. And it just goes on and on from there.
But are we really damaging it, though? I mean, I get that Donald Trump... Well, yeah, that's sad that, remember with Justin Trudeau, after Donald Trump threatened tariffs, Justin Trudeau ended up going down to Mar-a-Lago. I think that this idea that...
Look at him. He has nothing else to say but blink in like a Swiftie. Look at him. This is a real guy right here. That's a real man right here. Talk real man.
Donald Trump threatened tariffs, Justin Trudeau...
Look at Swiftie on the left with his chin. You could tell with a Big Mac cheese chin. Big Mac chin. Look at that. You are American. You should support America.
Going down to Mar-a-Lago. I think that this idea that world leaders...
Yeah, Blink, that's how you can do.
You're now seeing that. When Donald Trump, when he was over at the over in France, you saw world leaders coming to Donald Trump and realizing that he's the president of the United States.
Yeah, that's right. Finally, a real guy is talking. This is just finally. I mean, Jesus, you are American. Relax.
Donald Trump. Well, yeah, that's sad that, remember with Justin Trudeau, after Donald Trump threatened tariffs, Justin Trudeau ended up going down to Mar-a-Lago. I think that this idea that world leaders, I think you're now seeing that when Donald Trump, when he was over at the over in France, you saw world leaders coming to Donald Trump and realizing that he's the president of the United States. I do agree with this idea that Donald Trump, this is more of a signal. We're not going to get Greenland. Let's just be clear. We're not going to get the Panama. We're not going to get the Panama Canal. So anybody thinking that we're going to get it, we're literally not going to get it. But I think that.
But actually, we're going to get it. Okay, especially Panama Canal. You have to assert power. America is the world dominant power. If you do not do drastic things like that, especially concerning the Panama Canal, then what message are you sending to Xi Jinping? Because is Panama gonna just cancel China from doing business in the Panama Canal? No. China wants to go into Taiwan. Russia is going into Ukraine. I'm not supporting an invasion, but we're taking Panama Canal.
Donald Trump drawing attention to the issue that you mentioned about China's influence, but not just in the Panama Canal, but around the world. The Belt and Road Initiative, what China is doing in places all around the world is while the United States may go in aggressively and build military establishments, China is actually building infrastructure, partnering with places even in Africa to build infrastructure. So I think that Donald Trump, we're not going to get Greenland, but I think he is in a way trying to draw attention to those things.
But what he's doing does not go to the end that he says he wants to work on, which is...
Okay, our first cousin, relax. Okay, just relax. Okay, I know our first your cousin, but you ain't,
actually competing with China in a smart and strategic way. He's doing it in a ridiculously stupid way to, garner press, garner social media attention. His base loves it. But he's actually doing what he has always done, which is lie to his voters, lie to the people that support him.
No. He doesn't lie to his voters. Relax. He's probably the only politician that says exactly what he's going to do. I will pardon the J6ers. And voila, after the inauguration, I'm almost sure he's going to pardon the J6ers, unlike the great Biden. Okay? Biden says, I'm not going to pardon my son. What does he do? Goes right straight to pardoning his son. Schmuck.
Because he thinks they're stupid, or he is stupid. Because the way that he's engaging in this is not in the best interest of the national security of the United States or even the economic security of the
people
United
said the
States.
very same thing about Donald Trump throughout his time, even when he was president. The fact that Donald Trump
still
was,
true.
The fact it may be true,
mean, sometimes
but 76 million Americans said we don't have a problem.
Right,
with
but
your characterization.
just because they voted for cheaper eggs doesn't mean they
they're
want to
right.
invade
Well,
Panama.
it doesn't mean that they're wrong, though.
Okay, so now she's saying that 76 million Americans are wrong. So essentially, she's saying that the 47th is maybe not her president. Oh, I see.
Yeah, but they may want cheaper eggs, but it doesn't mean they want to invade Panama. Okay, so these are two different things.
Yeah, no, this is what I like about the press. No 1 ounce of sense. They're just educated. Okay, they went to school, they got the law degrees, they have all of that stuff, but no 1 ounce of sense, like common sense. He never spoke about invading Panama. He says the Panama Canal was built by American men, and American men died in droves. Thousands of American men died in droves based on or due to malaria, yellow fever. So you're telling me American men died and then we're just gonna let it slide. Oh, I see. Oh, no, we're not letting nothing slide. And tell Swifty over there to go to a Taylor Swift concert and eat some mac and cheese or some burger or some cheese pizza and give him some sweet tea and let him go somewhere else because let the man act. These are the type of men that will tell you it's okay for a man to be in women's sport. It's okay for a man to be in women's sport. Yeah, we taking Panama Canal back.
So let's not say the American people voted for invading Panama. And think about think about what happened in the first
One
term.
at a time, please. We can't all hear you at the same time.
Sorry. Think about what happened in the first term. He threatened a bunch of countries. Sometimes the extortion works, right? Sometimes countries paid up to the threats. That doesn't mean it's a good thing to do. That doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. It's like if Tony Soprano ran a country. Oh, nice canal you got there. It'd be a shame if something happened to
you. So now it's comparing Tony Soprano to Trump. Yeah, look, Trump. This is the background. Trump was a real estate developer in New York. Like nobody should forget that. This is who this man is. This man is or was a real estate developer in New York. This is essentially Trump can pass for a gangster. Okay. Yeah. Like most people don't know. But to be a developer in New York, yeah, you better know you're one of the toughest men in New York. You're developing in New York, and you're not like developing, townhomes, duplexes, or, suburbs. He's developing high rise. At a point, Trump Tower was the tallest building in New York. Do you know what that means? Like, you need to, like, people forget who this man is. People forget who Trump is. Trump ain't no regular degular. No. This was a developer in New York. What? Do you know the amount of notoriety? Do you know the amount of fear you must put in people's heart? This is just facts, okay? In case everybody want to live in bubble land or la la land. Do you know the amount of fear you must put in your opponent's mind or heart before you become someone like Trump in New York to be a developer? Do you know what it takes to be that in New York? Yeah, I think it's a joke and stuff. It's not a joke and stuff, guys. He's one of the toughest men alive. And now he is president of the United States. He just happens to be a good guy. Okay. This is something that we should appreciate. He just happens to be a good guy. He just happens to be someone who actually loves his country. But let him be who he is. He is a fighter. And nobody F's with someone like that because he grew up developing buildings that not just politicians were against him, the gang mobs in New York were against him. Or you think it's just sweet to build in New York in the 70s and he still thrived? Yeah, Trump ain't no regular guy, man.
Do it. You know, sometimes people will buckle under that pressure, but that's not what American foreign policy should
I mean,
or is supposed
should
to be.
we take seriously an emboldened Trump really actually legitimately seeing just acquisition as in his future? I mean, he didn't do it in the first term. I don't think we can rule out that he's not going to attempt it.
This is a mild version of the madman theory, that you really never know exactly what Trump is going to do. That old saying.
Exactly. Nobody knows exactly what Trump is going to do. And this is why I voted for Trump, because a commander in chief, if the leader of the free world, okay, the president of the United States should not be a predictable person. So what? You're going to predict what your commander in chief is going to do? Then why do we need a commander in chief? Why do we need a man who you know exactly what he's going to do? You want to have an element of surprise if you are the commander in chief of the United States, because this is the United States. People forget a lot of country want to see the United States fall. Newsflash: everybody doesn't love the United States. The United States supports a lot of country, not every country in the world, minus the like high terrorism, whatever countries. A lot of countries want to see the United States fall. Americans, open your mind, open your head, and see what is going on. A lot of countries want to see America fall. So you think it's just he has to prove to the world that you ain't coming over here to nah, we ain't playing all that. This is the only way leaders of the world only see a strong leader and say, you know what, we're not gonna mess with that kind of man, because he is essentially like us, but in a good way. Look, would you rather be a gardener in the war or a warrior in the garden? That's it. That's it. Okay, I would rather be a warrior in the garden than be a gardener in the war, and that's what Trump is. Trump is a warrior. Okay, he's a warrior. He just decides to stay in the garden. But if you say, okay, well, we're going to come to your garden, then you're going to unleash the warrior inside of me because I'm already a warrior. Okay, this is what I do for a living. That's who Trump is. And that's why nobody wants smoke. Everybody knows nobody wants smoke with the OG, the legendary, the 45th, now the 47th. But we've been having, Biden is definitely a gardener in the war. Kamala is the grass in the garden in the war.
Take him seriously, but not literally. Look, we're not invading Panama today. We're probably not going to invade Panama anytime soon. But there's that back of the mind of every world leader, that question of, well, what will Trump do? Well, I hope, was Trump was willing to take, to take out Soleimani on Iraqi soil, that the U.S. had several opportunities to take beforehand, but it was deemed kind of provocative and risky. Donald Trump is not afraid of being provocative. Every move in Ukraine with the Biden administration, there's been this hesitation about taking, well, do we want to be escalatory? Will it be seen as provocative by Vladimir Putin? Donald Trump doesn't care if anybody sees him as provocative.
Look at Swifty.
Being provocative and thuggish with enemies is one thing. Being provocative and thuggish with allies is a completely different thing, okay? And if you want to be tough on Iran, I don't think you'll get a lot of people behind that. If you want to be tough on Putin, and I hope President Trump decides someday to be tough on Putin, you'll get...
Somebody tell Swifty to sit down. Okay, somebody tell Swifty right here to go to the side and sit his butt down. Okay? This is for adults. This are adult conversation. What is Jerry Curls?
A lot of people behind that. Being tough on Canada, okay, that's a different ball of...
Okay.
And unpredictability is only good if it's intentional.
You can never make this up, guys. Look at this Swifty right here. Look at it.
Enemies is one thing. Being provocative and thuggish with allies is a completely different thing, okay? And if you want to be tough on Iran, I don't think you'll get a lot of people behind that. If you want to be tough on Putin, and I hope President Trump decides someday to be tough on Putin, you'll get a lot of people behind that. Being tough on Canada, okay, that's a different ball of wax.
Yeah. Swifty shouldn't be talking when it comes to serious issues like that, okay? Somebody tell that guy. We don't need his impute. All right. It's going bonkers in New York right now.
The illegal migrant arrested for setting a woman on fire, then watching her burn to death on a New York City subway, was previously deported. An ICE spokesperson telling Fox News the suspect is, quote, an unlawfully present Guatemalan citizen who entered the United States without admission by an immigration official. Enforcement and removal operations removed him from the U.S. to Guatemala June 7th, 2018. Jonathan Fays, a former DHS Deputy Assistant Secretary, the former Director of ICE, and a former federal prosecutor. He joins me now. Jonathan, great to see you. Sorry under these horrific circumstances. And I want to add one more thing to this. Guardian Angels founder Curtis Lewa thinks the Daniel Penny case was the reason bystanders on that train did not help. We're going to read the quote right now. If we could scroll up a little, guys. There we go. Quote, there's no doubt that people don't want to get involved. It's the Daniel Penny factor. It's frozen people. They're saying to themselves, I don't want to get jammed up like Penny. So, Jonathan, doesn't it seem like we have the worst of both worlds here? An entirely preventable crime because the suspect should not have been in the country in the first place. And now a city where people are too scared to be good Samaritans because they don't want to have happen to them what happened to Daniel Penny.
I think you're exactly right. You have bad policies coming together and collide to make the lives worse for the citizens of New York, particularly that victim. But I think it is really interesting. He says the Penny effect. It reminds me of, what people were calling the Ferguson effect several years ago, where police just basically aren't going to want to do their jobs if they're always going to be accused of misconduct and wrongfully in many and often most cases. And it is so sad when you see that because, one, no one tried to help her when she was burning. I saw that article in the New York Post, I think, yesterday. But also, maybe it could have been prevented, and no one's going to want to stand in the way because even though Daniel Penny was acquitted, he still had to go through the rigmarole of a trial, the expense, the stress of not knowing if he's going to prison. So it really is just absolutely horrific. And then you go back to the fact that this was preventable.
Too sad.
We know the Biden administration, after this person was deported during the Trump administration, they didn't.
You guys need to understand this. Like, this is the United States. This is happening. This is happening in the United States. Okay? This right here is in the United States, in New York. This is New York. Okay? People around the world, when they think about the United States, what they see in their mind is New York. Because everybody wants to come to New York. And this is what is happening right now.
Do anything to prevent people from coming in. In fact, they encourage people to come in by, providing them benefits, by telling them once they're here, they'll never get deported absent the most extraordinary circumstance. So, yeah, all of these bad policies collide to lead to one of the most horrific deaths I've ever seen. Plus, it makes the lives of everybody in New York and everyone in the country worse off because we know sanctuary cities, which is another one I think we're getting to, but those aren't just limited to the people in those cities. Like we know with Lincoln Riley, New York sanctuary cities policy led to her death. So all of these bad policies harm everyone, not just the victims, which makes them even more and more disgraceful than, just limited to a precise incident.
We don't just lose our humanity by happenstance. It is furthered along with policies like you mentioned, like sanctuary city policies and this soft on crime DA that we've seen throughout the last 10, 15 years, I'd argue. We mentioned sanctuary cities, conservative watchdog America First Legal putting sanctuary cities on notice by sending advisory letters to 249 officials across our country. The letter reads, quote, we have identified your jurisdiction as a sanctuary jurisdiction that is violating federal laws. Such lawlessness subjects you and your subordinates to significant risk of criminal and civil liability. Jonathan, what criminal and civil liability, as a lawyer, as somebody who's prosecuted people, could these jurisdictions and the officials in them face?
The criminal liability, there's a harboring statute. It's Title 8. Section 324, which basically, if you do anything to shield, conceal, harbor an illegal alien, somebody you know is an illegal alien or have reason to know is an illegal.
You guys need to think about this. So this is busted in June on the 11th of June. Okay. If you're gonna come into this country to be like this, I'm sorry. Stay in your country. I'm sorry. Because I'm a legal immigrant, but I didn't come to the United States to just come, oh, let me just run and survive. No, I came here to be a part of something bigger than me, not to add to the problem. Like, I don't know why you would leave your country to do this in somebody else's country, because this isn't even fair to Americans. Because that's what I'm thinking in my mind. Like, if I'm gonna be a part of the greatest country in the world, I might as well be an asset to the United States. I might as well add to the goodness of America. If I'm gonna come here to the United States, I don't want to be part of the bad ones. I want to be part of the good ones. I want to be the one that adds to the goodness of the United States. I don't want to be from another country, want to be a part of this great country, then I tarnish the image of immigration. No, it should be okay. I moved here from another country, but now I'm a doctor and I'm saving lives. That's what you look. That's what it should be, because that's why you came to the United States. It shouldn't be that you came here and then you're killing people. Why didn't you just stay in your country and kill people? Huh? I would like to know. Why do people leave their home and come here and start being disastrous? That's not going to work. If you're from another country and you come to the United States, it is your duty, it's a duty, an obligation to be responsible and learn the law, and also focus on being an asset to the United States. Be responsible, get a job. It's just common sense, bro.
Conceal, harbor
Yes, sir.
an illegal alien, somebody you know is an illegal alien or have reason to know is an illegal alien in this country, you could be guilty of harboring, which is a federal felony with a maximum penalty of 10 years. So you have that statute, and the way the federal government could approach this, these communities that the leaders are directing people beneath them in sheriff's office and stuff to essentially violate, to harbor, to hide illegal aliens, they could be targets of these investigations. And all what the federal government could do in terms of the investigation is they could subpoena all of these people that work in the jails, work in the communities, subpoenas their communications, the records of these jails to find out who's illegal in the jail, when they're getting out, things like that. And what will make it particularly difficult for these communities or these sanctuary cities will be, it will be extremely expensive to fight this, and they don't want to go to federal prison solely to keep illegal alien criminals in the country, which is what they're doing. They're not, they try to portray this as, hey, we're trying to keep illegal aliens, people from being deported from schools or hospitals, but what they're doing in actuality is people in jails convicted of crimes or charged with serious crimes, like the one in Massachusetts you just referenced. That was a sanctuary city. They released a sex offender because they wouldn't cooperate with ICE. This is either going to stop or they're going to be criminally liable. They could also be civilly liable for things that these criminals commit once they've been released in violation of these ICE detainers. So I think they're really going to face some hard choices coming up at the beginning of the year, and I think most of them are going to yield, and the ones that don't are going to wish they did.
Finally, President Biden sparing dozens of federal death row inmates, including child murderers like Jorge Torres, who you, Jonathan, prosecuted. Let's go over his bio, if you will. He was given the death penalty after he sexually assaulted and stabbed two girls, one 8-year-old, one 9-year-old, to death in 2005. Then 4 years later, he strangled a 20-year-old naval officer. Is Jose Avila Torres someone who should be given the gift of a commutation this Christmas, Jonathan?
No, absolutely not. And this is so disgraceful to the Biden administration. And I just want to say the names of these victims. Laura Hobbs was 8 years old. Crystal Tobias was 9 years old when they were murdered on Mother's Day, stabbed to death. Laura Hobbs was sexually assaulted, stabbed in both eyes over 30 times in total. Amanda Snell was serving our country, was sexually assaulted and strangled while she slept in her barracks in Fort Myer in Arlington, Virginia. Torres also attacked 3 women in Arlington, raped one of them, strangled her, and left her for dead in the woods. She happened to survive. So, yeah, he shouldn't be given a gift by the Biden administration. And what the Biden administration did, which is really makes this disgraceful in a number of ways. One, he's basically nullifying the death penalty totally, but he didn't want to go through Congress, nor did he want to discuss that he was doing it. This was a Christmas Eve release when he did this. The other thing that makes it really bad is there are 3 people that were spared the death penalty, the most high profile of these cases. And Biden, in his statement about why he's getting rid of or why he's commuting the sentence, he was like he couldn't in good conscience impose the death penalty, meaning the death penalty as a whole is unconscionable. But for some reason, it's not for high-profile cases. And the final point I want to make, I would like to know, and I hope somebody will ask the White House, did they notify any of the victims that they were going to commute the sentence of the killers of their children and their loved ones right on Christmas Eve, or did they just have to find out about it in the news yesterday? The whole thing just stinks. It's such horrible. Cynical politics, the way he did it. It shows lack of compassion for the victim, which we've seen over and over this administration. They put criminals ahead of victims, criminals ahead of cops. It's one of the most disgraceful things and done in the most embarrassing way. If he wants to do it, he should have put a bill in front of Congress saying, we want to eliminate the federal death penalty. But he didn't do that, didn't have the courage, if these are even his convictions or whoever.
Of course. This is straight up Biden. Most people say he's been a liar, and I support that, because if you say you're not going to pardon your son and then go right ahead and pardon your son, then of course you are a liar.
An illegal immigrant now under arrest and charged with murder in New York City. Police say the suspect set a woman on fire on the subway in Brooklyn and watched her burn. Her horrifying death was caught on video. The Brooklyn district attorney prosecuting the case said this gruesome and senseless act of violence against a vulnerable woman will be met with the most serious consequences. Fox confirmed that the 33-year-old suspect entered the country illegally in Arizona back in June of 2018. Just days later, he was removed from the country, deported, and returned to Guatemala. It's unclear when he re-entered the United States. No one knows. Former acting Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf says it speaks to a larger problem.
He obviously came back in as a gotaway, and there's been over 2.5 million gotaways under the last 4 years because Border Patrol agents aren't out there on the line patrolling the border. Instead, they're in Border Patrol facilities facilitating and processing illegal aliens.
The New York Post cover with this headline, up in flames. It also calls out New York Governor Kathy Hochul. On Sunday, the same day that the crime was committed, some 8 hours later, she took a victory lap, boasting about lower subway crime rates. New York Democratic Congresswoman Richie Torres posted, has there ever been a more tone-deaf governor in the history of New York? And incoming border czar Tom Homan with this.
She has a green light law. ICE and CBP can't even work with local law enforcement. So Governor Hochul, shame on you. There's nothing you can say that's going to make this right in New York.
Congresswoman Claudia Tenney of New York with us now. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us. So much about this case is just outrageous.
Yes, it just gets more outrageous every day. Things are going to continue to happen until we have a new administration that actually deals with this crisis, the border crisis. President Trump has promised to do that, as has Tom Homan. And he mentioned the green light law, which was put in place actually by Governor Cuomo, and they refused to repeal it, not to mention the sanctuary cities. And this Guatemalan, who was an illegal immigrant with a criminal record, who was deported, was found at the Days Inn Hotel on 36th Street just last year. So he's been here, getting food and shelter and all the accommodations, probably a cell phone, access to health care, and he probably would have been given some kind of tuition assistance as an illegal immigrant based on New York's laws. So Kathy Hochul is doing nothing about this. And by the way, she recently did a victory lap saying how safe it is to ride on New York City subways. Now, who would you rather have? Would you rather have this guy running around around setting, innocent women on fire, or a former Marine, Daniel Penny, who was saving people, seeing a violent person and protecting lives. And thankfully, he was, found innocent by a jury of his peers. But this is the crisis that we face in New York. And it's not just New York City. It's all over New York because these laws apply all over New York. It is a sanctuary.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy, Genesis. Okay, look. It is Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas to every one of you guys. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas Eve and get Christmas tomorrow. I hope you spend quality time with your family. You know, hot chocolate, cookies, and, just have a good time, okay? Snack. Have a wonderful, wonderful time with your family. I'm sorry I have to bring you this news. It's sort of kind of like tragedy, but this is what is going on in the United States. Okay. I still want you to enjoy your Christmas, though. Okay. I want you to enjoy your Christmas with your family. Spend time with your loved ones because there's nothing like family. Merry Christmas, everybody. And let's get back to what's going on in the United States.
As Tom Homan said, the green light law prohibits police officers and different law enforcement agencies from working together, the exact opposite of what the 9/11 Commission, a bipartisan commission, recommended after 9/11 to prevent any type of terrorist act or these types of acts coming in. So when you have people here illegally and you allow them to be gotaways and have no vetting, this is sadly what the American people get, and it's really tragic.
Congresswoman, to the point you made a moment ago about Daniel Penny, we noted, and it has been noted on several of our programs, that there were a number of people who just kind of stood by and watched what was happening. Do you think that's potentially a Penny effect? That people, after what happened to him, don't want to get involved?
Well, it certainly has a chilling effect. I don't know if that's a little bit of New York City or people don't feel confident enough to help themselves. But that's why we have to have dangerous people out of the way. That's the major role of government, is to keep us safe in our streets and our subways as we have a free society. And that's why we have police. And that's why, this is all of the fallout from the defund police movement started by AOC and others. This is what you get. You get unsafe streets, unsafe cities. And demoralizing the police and making people think they're the enemy and relying on good Samaritans like Daniel Penny is not the answer. And that's not the solution. Look, I think that this is definitely, as you say, having a chilling effect.
Right. All right. Back to the issue of sanctuary cities. A conservative legal group is putting sanctuaries on notice ahead of an expected mass deportation by the incoming Trump administration. America First Legal says it has notified nearly 250 officials in jurisdictions which limit or forbid local law enforcement cooperation with ICE agents. Some New York leaders are among those 250. One of the
So for people just tuning in and don't know what's going on, this was a very tragic situation that happened in New York, I think yesterday morning or 2 days ago. An illegal migrant who now they've realized or found out due to some investigation that he's from, I think, Guatemala. And Guatemala, this guy set a woman ablaze on the subway in New York. She was sleeping at the time, and he lit up her blanket or something she used in covering herself. Because if you've been to New York, you know the subway is cold. And of course, it is winter. Okay. So he lit her blanket up, and he left the train. And when she woke up, she realized she was on fire. It was already too late, and she's trying to find her way out of the subway or whatever. Definitely in agony. And this guy sat down and watched her burn. That's what is happening right now.
Organization senior vice president tells Fox News the left-wing politicians who create and run them and those who support them put our citizens at risk, undermine our Constitution, and dangerously erode the rule of law. It's one thing for a conservative watchdog organization to put folks on notice, but Tom Homan, the incoming border czar who's got authority here, says if anybody stands in the way of ICE removal process when it comes to criminal illegal aliens, he's going to prosecute those people.
I think that's an excellent idea. Not to mention, we should be defunding these cities that are perpetuating sanctuary city laws. Sanctuary city laws are defiance of law. That is not upholding the rule of law. We can't have municipalities and even some college campuses actually engaging in undermining and flaunting our laws. That's how you have a society. That's what our Constitution is based on, is upholding the rule of law and making sure that those things are enforced. Tom Homan is going to enforce that. These jurisdictions and these people who are attempting to obstruct the deportation of people who are here illegally should be held accountable, and they should be prosecuted.
And then there's this issue, Congresswoman, a lot of outrage over President Biden's last-minute move to spare federal death row inmates after record commutations granted just this month. 37 out of 40 people who were on death row. But Progressive Squad member Ayanna Pressley is singing the president's praises. Listen to this.
State-sanctioned murder is not justice. And today, what President Biden did demonstrated moral leadership, compassionate leadership, informed by his own faith, and a position that he's held for a very long time. So wherever you fall on the issue of the death penalty, one thing is for sure, is that whether or not people think it's fair or unfair, it has not been applied fairly. It has had a disparate impact on low-income people, Black people, and other marginalized persons.
Critics are pointing to the victims of some of these inmates. One killed 12-year-old Lexis Roberts in Louisiana in 2010. Another took the lives of 8-year-old Laura Hobbs and 9-year-old Crystal Tobias near Chicago in 2005. That same person later strangled 20-year-old naval officer Amanda Snell. I spoke with former prosecutor Senator Eric Schmidt yesterday on The Focus. Listen to what he said.
I can only imagine the grief and the shock that these families are experiencing as they get ready for the holidays, remembering the loved ones that were lost and now having to deal with this sort of insult to injury. The outrage is real. It's justified. Joe Biden, on his way out, is again cementing his status as one of our worst presidents.
Biden did not commute sentences for 3 killers, one who murdered Jewish congregants at a synagogue, another who killed African-American worshipers at a church in Charleston, and the Boston Marathon bomber. The Wall Street Journal editorial board writes Mr. Biden's inconsistent conscience is an affront to the victims, and it has not made the justice system better or the country safer. Congresswoman, Biden is showing mercy to these killers, but they showed none to their victims. In particular, Lexis Roberts, 12 years old, who watched as the killer killed her mother and then shot her 4 times and slashed her throat.
Yeah, these are heinous crimes that deserve the death penalty. And I understand the sentiment that people don't feel comfortable having the government put someone to death unless it's absolutely proven. And I think that's a good sentiment. But remember, this Ayanna Pressley, I'm sure she supports late-term abortion. So the sanctity of life is not something that she holds dear to innocent children in the womb. And late-term abortion is the rule of law in New York State and across many of the, really liberal states in the country. And it's kind of incidentally when the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade with the Dobbs decision, what they actually did was leave it up to the states. It just said it's a state issue, and you're going to have a while where we have this disparate interpretation. Some states are really extreme, like New York, and others are going to have a little bit more of a similar law to Roe versus Wade originally. But here, this is the problem. When you have the Biden administration, Biden claims it's his Catholic faith. How do you spare some and not others? Just because they look like they were politically motivated. If you're going to believe in the death penalty or not believe in the death penalty, you have to be consistent. And obviously, Joe Biden was not consistent in this. And I hate to say this, but it's probably some Marxist-leaning Democrats, Obama holdovers that are staffers, because we know that Joe Biden is basically checked out and is not even really doing the work in the White House, which is another whole other case for another show, the tragedy of that situation. But also, why is this guy still the president of the United States when he's incapable of committing,
Democrat really messed up. Democrats, they messed up with Joe Biden. I guess they didn't foresee what would happen in future, because nobody really does. We just speculate. But it's like, this has been a disaster for the Democratic Party. And for the next 4 years, for the Democrat Party, I don't know why they're not Democratic, but okay. For the next 4 years, 4 to 8 years, it is almost for sure that no Democrat candidate will become the executive power in the United States, which is the presidential seat. I don't think so. Because who? Because who will they come up with in 2028? Fetterman, AOC? Those are the only two. I mean, who else? Because Trump prides himself in being a man of his word. If he delivers on everything he said he's going to do, slash electric prices by 50% in the first year, so that means your electricity bill will be 50% less in the first year. Cap interest rate at 10% for credit cards. God knows a lot of people need credit card relief because everybody's in debt. Everybody is in debt when it comes to credit card. For sure. Close the border. Okay. End the unnecessary war so you don't have to send taxpayers billions of dollars for ammunitions or in ammunitions.
Doing this work. And remember something, President Trump and even President Bush, there were a couple hundred pardons. Obama issued a number, 8,000 pardons under Joe Biden. A one-term president with 8,000 pardons. That's incredible. And so many of them are so heinous and so inappropriate on this Christmas Eve, which is a time of joy and light. So this is just, another reprehensible act as he walks out the door.
Yeah, a number of people have wondered how much Joe Biden actually had to do with this or whether it was staffers who were really at the helm. I just want to put a button on this, Congresswoman, with this. Don't need a reaction from it because this morning the president-elect, Donald Trump, posted his reaction to Biden's commutations. He said, quote, "When you hear the facts of each, you won't believe that Biden did this. Makes no sense. Relatives and friends are further devastated." Trump added, "As soon as I am inaugurated, I will direct the Justice Department to vigorously pursue the death penalty to protect American families and children from violent rapists, murderers, and monsters. We will be a nation of law and order again."
I support that. I definitely support it, especially like violent rapists, murderers. Come on, man. Come on, man. Yeah, you're going to have to go. Bye. You're going to have to go.
I do want to get to another big story here at the top of the hour that we have been covering over the past couple weeks, as the man accused of gunning down the head of United Healthcare in Midtown Manhattan pleaded not guilty to nearly a dozen state charges. Luigi Mangione appeared.
There you have it. Luigi Mangione has now pleaded not guilty. Everybody, don't forget, Luigi Mangione was only a suspect. He was a suspect in the CEO murder. The United Healthcare CEO guy, Luigi Mangione, the suspect they had, he was only a suspect. He wasn't already known to be the guy. Okay, so now he's saying, I am not guilty. Luigi Mangione, bro. This boy has fans. This man literally has fans, bro.
Briefly Monday in a New York courtroom on state charges in the fatal shooting of CEO Brian Thompson. The state charges do include murder as an act of terrorism. The 26-year-old was expected to be arraigned Thursday when he was quickly flown from Pennsylvania to New York, but that was postponed after federal charges of murder and stalking were filed against him. While New York does not have the death penalty, the federal charges do make that an option if he's convicted. Mangione was arrested at a McDonald's over in Altoona, Pennsylvania, days after Thompson's murder. An employee of the fast food restaurant recognized him from photos and videos that were circulated by the police department. Mangione now jailed in New York without bond, staying in the same facility as Sean Diddy Combs and Sam Bankman-Fried. So much to discuss, so I do want to bring in Herb Subin, the lead trial attorney at Subin & Associates in New York City. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Thanks, Josh. Great to be here.
Thank you. And first off, I do want to say here that we know during that hearing, we did actually hear from Mangioni's attorney. Now, she said that because of the comments that have been made by New York City Mayor Eric Adams about the case, that is going to make it very difficult for her client to get a fair trial. What do you make of that?
So she's right. I mean, he's gotten so much publicity, and what you're hoping for when you're picking a jury is that you're going to get people that have an open mind and haven't prejudged the case. In this case, it's going to be virtually impossible to get anybody who hasn't heard about the case and probably doesn't have an opinion about the case. Mr. Mangione has been such a polarizing figure that finding 12 people that really don't have a preconceived notion of what their opinion is on him is going to be very, very tough, if not impossible.
And once again, we did see supporters of Mangione gather outside of the courthouse as he went before the judge. Is the love, quote unquote, for Mangione and the nationwide attention good or bad for the defense? And what about the prosecution? But I also want to mention there were people who lined up outside of the courtroom and waited to actually get inside because they are supporters of his and just wanted to watch. So is all of this good or bad for both sides?
It's probably much better for the defense. Remember that the prosecution has to prove that Mr. Mangione is guilty on all of the counts by a unanimous verdict beyond a reasonable doubt. It's a very high standard. And if you have people that are liking him and feel for his so-called cause, then that's going to create a real problem for the prosecution to get unanimity, which is what they're going to need. As for the defense, the problem is going to be that there seems to be a mountain of evidence against him. And so will the people, will the jurors do their job and decide the case based solely on the evidence, or is it going to be more about his personality and his sort of iconic status?
One thing I want to point out here when we take a look at this video, this is actually from inside of the courtroom just yesterday for that arraignment. My understanding is that cameras are rarely allowed inside the courtrooms there in New York. We don't see it happen very often. However, obviously a camera allowed in here. So what do you make of that, the fact that those cameras were allowed to capture this?
So it generally, number one is the courtrooms in New York State are open to the public. So anybody can go to a courthouse and watch whatever proceeding is going on, unless it's a family court or one of the specific matter. Ordinarily, though, New York doesn't allow courts, but it does allow the discretion of the trial judge in particular instances to allow cameras in the courtroom. But for the vast, vast, vast majority of cases, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is the first one since I've worked here that we've actually been able to get a camera inside the courtroom, and that's several years. Do you think at any point that Mangione is going to have bond set to where he can be out on bond, or is that unlikely as the case does progress?
Okay. Yeah, that's it. Almost definitely no, Josh. Basically, in the federal court, he's been held without bail. Yesterday, when he went to state court, they put a symbolic $1 bail on him because the state knew that he was going to be held in federal custody until both trials are completed. So the simple answer to your question is no.
What do you think about the murder as an act of terrorism charge? That's been a topic of discussion over the last week or so. Is that charge used very often, and is it likely to stick?
So no, it's not used very often. Generally, by the way, we're seeing a charge of first-degree murder, which is unusual in itself because it's murder with aggravating circumstances. For example, if you kill a judge or a police officer or a first responder or murder for hire, those are generally what we see for first-degree murder. Murder in furtherance of an act of terrorism is murder with the intent to coerce either the population or the government. The thing, I do believe that there's a good chance that that will stick because of the quote manifesto that Mr. Mangione had with him, that he wanted to whack a health executive because of his disdain for the health insurance industry that we have here in this country. So that, I think, is going to be a critical piece of evidence in that murder for terrorism.
All right. Herb, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and help discuss this just a little bit further. Is there anything else you want to add about any of this before I let you go?
Yeah, that just my sense is that picking the jury here in this case is going to be quite a challenge for everybody. And, but my belief is that once the jurors do start to sit, they really want to get to justice and get to the right result. So even though he's quite popular, Mr. Mangione, I hope, gets a fair trial and that the jurors decide the case based on the evidence.
Before I let you...
That's true. That's true. It's hard. It's like, it may be hard to find a jury that would convict this guy, except they do their due diligence and make sure this guy is in some of the jury members would not be one of his fans because a lot of people are supporting this guy for some reason. I don't know.
Breaking this morning, flights are resuming for American Airlines after the FAA lifted the ground stop the airline issued due to technical issues, it said. This happened during the busiest travel time of the year as people are rushing home for the holidays. We spoke with our affiliate WFOR in Fort Lauderdale, Florida last hour. Here is what she says they were experiencing during that brief ground stop.
The flight was supposed to leave at 7 a.m. We got there, we're waiting to board the flight, and then the announcement came over the loudspeaker saying that there's going to be a delay. They were having serious technical issues, saying that they weren't able to scan tickets, not able to board luggage onto the flight. And then we were told that we're going to get updates every 15 minutes. So people were sitting there patiently, a lot of people wearing Santa hats. There were so many children there as well. A lot of parents really concerned about getting home for the holidays.
All right, we have our Lucy Kavanaugh looking off into the wilderness because she looks very calm. Things don't seem too terrible there at Chicago O'Hare's airport, which is busy on any day of the week. What are you seeing there, Lucy?
Well, Sarah, I was looking off at the actual boards here, the departure boards. Most flights are delayed, but none look to be canceled. And, of course, the usual hustle and bustle of Chicago O'Hare Airport, of course, a hub for American Airlines. You can see things returning back to normal, but it was definitely a scary start for this on this.
How many of you tried to travel during this time? Did you try to travel home, or are you home with your family or somewhere else in another state? I'm still in Georgia. I stay in Georgia. Okay. So, yep.
Christmas Eve for some holiday travelers. After that brief outage grounded all of the flights, the airline said a vendor technology issue briefly affected flights. They also said that they began boarding again around 8 a.m. Eastern. This is according to an American Airlines spokesperson. Now, a lot of folks learning about this outage on social media when they saw reports that some flights were returning back to their gates and delays were about 90 minutes. But a lot of folks, like I said, learning about this online. Take a listen, including the two passengers that we spoke to.
We saw it first on our phones, and then we saw on Instagram, like a news report, that said all planes grounded for American in the U.S. So we were like, what's going on? And she recently watched a movie that a cyber attack happened. So she thought it was crazy. She's like, Christmas Eve crisis.
So they're getting to Grandma in Vegas. A lot of folks are getting to their destinations on, again, one of the busiest travel days of the year. I think one aviation analytics firm estimated that American was going to have 3,300 domestic flights today. So thankfully this ground stop, this travel delay has been averted.
AAA reports 119 million people will be traveling 50 miles or more from home, which is more than the previous high set in 2019. Joining us right now is travel expert and managing editor of The Points Guy, Clint Henderson. It's great to see you. Thanks for jumping on. A ground stop for a major airline like American, even short-lived. How far are you seeing, or could the ripple effects go in terms of the disruption even after they've renewed service, Clint?
Yeah, well, just to give you one example, I've been tracking a flight leaving JFK going to San Francisco. That flight's now delayed 3 hours, so it does have a ripple effect. The good news is it seems to have been resolved fairly quickly, so hopefully there won't be any kind of cascading issues. American Airlines said they are sorry for the inconvenience to passengers, but the good news is, like most fallout we've seen from these incidents lately, it's being resolved fairly quickly, and it hasn't had the domino effect that we saw back in 2022, for example.
Yeah, I think everyone's still, I feel like they're hurt from that example, but things have been resolved. A little traumatized from that one for sure. That was so wild. More broadly, Clint, looking at the numbers, the busiest day that ever in airports was, I believe it was the Sunday after Thanksgiving. TSA screened more than 3 million people then. TSA also saying 10 of the busiest travel days on record just have happened in just the past 6 months. What are you expecting for Christmas and New Year's, and what should travelers be preparing for?
So more of the same. And, this is why I recommend, especially during the holidays, that you get to the airport a little earlier than normal. I'm the 3 hours early kind of guy. But, airports now have so many amenities, lounges, restaurants, shopping, that I don't mind spending a little time at the airport. And of course, I have all those clear and TSA pre-check, but there's even some free screening things you can do, like getting a place in line at Orlando Airport and things like that. So definitely check into that stuff. But overall, the airlines are handling things better. We've only really seen one major meltdown in this year. That was CrowdStrike, and that was an IT failure. So fingers crossed that we're on the upswing. I think the airports have the staff they need now. So that's a relief.
I have personally gone a 180 on this. I used to be screaming at the last minute, jumping on the plane at the last second, loving to see if I could kind of beat the buzzer. And I'm now the 3 hours early person. I'd rather not have the stress, and I'd rather sit and drink several more cups of coffee before taking off. So I have taken your advice for sure. Let's look back at this past year in travel. As I mentioned, it's just been a huge year for travel. What were the biggest travel trends that you saw in 2024?
So people are traveling farther to more exotic destinations, and they're going for longer. We've done some polling. We've been tracking the trends very carefully, obviously. Average length of vacation, instead of 4.5 days, is now 5.5 days. So I think what you're seeing happen is a lot of people are extending trips because of work from home policies. So whereas they maybe could only get away for the weekend before, they're now extending those trips by a day on either side. So that's a big trend that I expect we'll see continue. And also just the popularity of travel. I think social media has really impacted that. I think people see their friends' selfies in front of the Eiffel Tower or in Tokyo, and they want to copy that trip. So I think you're seeing a lot of excitement around travel. And really this dates back to the pandemic when people were stuck at home. I think a lot of people decided that what they wanted to do was to travel more.
And so what are your predictions for 2025? Because I find it interesting because it was such a huge year for travel, but also this was the year of inflation. And this was one of the years of inflation, and people struggling to pay for their groceries. And so you kind of have this combination of factors, and I'm wondering what you think it all means for the year to come.
Yeah, I think that's one area that folks they don't care how much it costs. We haven't seen a lot of price resistance from consumers. I will say over the last 5 years, airfares have actually come down slightly overall. And I regularly see deal alerts. So there is deals to be had out there, and people are taking advantage of those, but people are just not as price sensitive as they used to be when it comes to travel. I think that's the one area people are willing to splurge on right now. The other interesting thing that's happening is the strong US dollar is certainly helping for international travel in places like Tokyo, in places like Europe. The US dollar just goes further. It can be cheaper to go to Europe than it can be to go to Las Vegas, for example. So that's one of the things that I'm watching. The return of business travel is a big.
Thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. I don't know if you guys have heard, but Bill Clinton has been discharged from hospital because he was hospitalized for some reason, but now he's been discharged. Nancy Pelosi too would you say underwent or she undergone? Okay. But she had a surgery, okay? Hip surgery. And hopefully she's better now. But anyway, Biden signs $895 billion defense bill despite provision restricting trans medical care for minor. Shout out to Biden. Shout out to Biden, yo. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy Genesis. I will be signing out right now. It is Christmas Eve. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself, believe in your dreams, and believe in God. Have a wonderful Christmas Eve. I will be back here after having a good time with my daughter. And yeah, it's going to be fun. And we're going to make memories as usual. Family is key. Hold your family close. At least, like the least you could do is hold your kids close. Okay, things happen, but hold your hold your kids close. Hold your children close. Love your kids, train them, provide for them, and give them memories that's gonna last forever. Okay. With that being said, God bless you. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas Eve. And if you don't see me before tomorrow, then Merry Christmas. Woo! I was gonna do this. Woo! Woo! Well, look. Ho ho ho. It is your boy Genesis. Merry Christmas. I love you guys.